Psychopath sits at the top of my list as my only 10 out of 10 rating. It's one of the only series where I can think of maybe one or two complaints off the top of my head, and it throws philosophy in the viewer's face in the best way. A background theme for the gruesome art of Rikika Oreo, the hunting games of Toyohisa Senguchi, and even blunt trash talk between Makishima and Kogami. They seriously have a philosophy trash talk. It's fucking great. This, along with Akane's interactions with the Sybil System, paint a picture of a gray zone of morality, covering the importance of free will, the cost of safety, and the perception of power. We're going to be getting into a lot of spoilers here, so I recommend if you haven't seen it, going and watching it. It's much better to go into it not knowing the twists. It's not imperative, but it makes it a lot better. So, with that warning out of the way, we can continue here. There's so much great stuff going on in Season 1 that I've started about 3 different papers to get thoughts down on the series, and even started reading some of the works they quote throughout. But for all of the gray zone aspect, it's very clear that the system should be labeled the bad guy, most notably how the MWPSB team speaks on and interacts with it. Akane merely accepts it as a necessity to the structure of society, and most of them were trapped into the life of an enforcer by its readings. Or were they? Clearly they are stuck either being enforcers or spending their lives in essentially a solitary cell, but is it the system that actually did this to them? Today we're going to play a bit of devil's advocate and say, is the Sybil System actually evil, or is it just a tool for a corrupt society? First, let's lay down some background on the system, just for clarification. Sybil consists of 247 criminally asymptomatic minds who, due to their condition, apply a bias-free judgment upon civilians, using their psychopath's rating to take preemptive action before they can even commit crimes. At least, that's the idealized version of it. We see a clear bias in the system judgment in episode 18, as it overrides Ginoza's Dominator reading to show Kogami as a kill-worthy target after his persistence to take Makishima's life. In their pursuit of Makishima, Sybil allows a single mind to try and court him, as well as straining the minds and patience of the NWPSB by insisting he live. Clearly it takes selfish actions, however, it could be grimly argued that the addition of Makishima's mind in perspective to the system is worth the cost. The more minds added to the system, the less outlier cases like Makishima will exist in the future, and the less biased the system will become overall. Sybil also operates in another societal aspect, functioning as the distributor of labor through its aptitude tests. This again, somewhat dystopianly, can be seen as a way of calming society and making it more efficient. However, this gives the system a kind of indirect control over every act of society, as it can place any person in any role it sees fit. Now, citizens do have options based on these tests, as we see directly through Akane, creating some cracks in that theory, but it's unclear how much Sybil could manipulate the results, or influence someone to pick a certain option. In the aspects we've discussed so far, Sybil comes off as an entirely corrupt being with unchecked power. This all applies to one outlier case, however, as the show focuses simply on Makishima's arc in the grand scheme of things. And looking at it in a utilitarian scope, you could argue that the ends justify the means. However, that's not what we're here for today. I have a whole separate paper ready to go on the overall ethics of the system. The background info was really just to state that this is all part of an outlier case, that people like Makishima aren't popping up every day. The show clearly focuses on a very specific and special outlier case, which is why the system takes such drastic actions, because it wants to incorporate that mind to prevent any future similar cases. Now, the most clearly villainous aspect of Sybil that we see on a more day-to-day basis, that we see specifically through the main characters, is its containment of latent criminals in rehab facilities. We learn through Kagari, Kogami, Yayoi, and others that these facilities often act as permanent detention. Specifically in Yayoi's backstory, we see the disregard for actual treatment and patient happiness, and learn from Roichi Orio's story that those who do become treated are nothing more than overly medicated shells with so little stress capacity that they feel nothing at all. This is where the system is truly painted as despicable, robbing entire lives based on a bad day, anxiety and stress, or simple human mistakes. However, those final causes of Sybil aren't actually dictated by Sybil as far as we know. The system could very well be the hub prescribing medication, with doctors merely acting as couriers, and the detention facilities could be a mandate of Sybil from another Chief Kase-esque body, but these things are never discussed or brought to light in an anime so detailed that leads me to believe those last few theories are false. If we assume so, then the evils of the system actually fall to a flawed society. Rather than investing in true rehabilitation, drugs were developed to block human emotion entirely, including all forms of stress. And when presented with someone who could cause harm, they're locked up forever in an act to protect those not labeled by a belief in some unfailable higher power. In this way and others, Sybil almost takes the form of more of a religion. Its ways are to be followed, and deviance from such is punished by other believers. Rather than a sacred text, it has facts, numbers, and statistics, possibly even stories of the world before its existence. Belief in it isn't active, but passive. Rather than worship or prayer, it has a sort of anti-ritual. Conformity is belief, and in this way it's an almost inescapable force. Its ethics are the ethics of the society around it, and a clear social structure emerges from its laws. Where Sybil differs from a government is that the belief the system works is more important than the actual function. If people think it's watching and working, then it effectively is. We see from Makishima's assault on Nona Tower that Sybil has no way of fully defending itself, with minimal staff and protection. It relies on the idea that it is powerful, and the conformity that no one will look for it. So humanity didn't create an evil entity that destroys their life from the inside out, they created a concrete religion beyond their own power. If you're a latent criminal, then Sybil will lock you away forever. Except it doesn't. Medicating a high crime coefficient away is easier than actual treatment, and latent criminals are a variable that humanity doesn't care to look at. It's simpler and more efficient to just lock them away and forget about it than to care for them. Under the guise of a godlike judgment created by and of humanity itself, they can be justified in this act. In this respect, the Sybil system isn't wrong or right. It's only a tool for complacency and oversimplification. Humanity reduced itself to numbers and hues in order to move past the struggles of choice and free will. Not all of humanity partook in this decision, but a select few created a trap so clever a mere handful noticed, and an integration so deep the roots could never be removed. Honestly, the more I think about Psycho-Pass, the more I love it. Writing this gave me an even deeper appreciation for Makishima's character development. He challenges what it is to be human and turns down the powers of a god to try and be its killer instead. I'm not saying I agree with his methods or those of the Sybil system, but I think too many of the dark strokes were cast on Sybil itself. It's flawed, corrupt, selfish, and at the end of the day, it is still the villain that removes the free will I'd argue is crucial to the makeup of a human, making it ostensibly evil to me, but it was made and misused by a complacent humanity. Honestly, in a lot of these discussions, I don't reach a concrete conclusion. That's because what really matters here is getting people thinking about anime, getting people thinking about series I really love, especially this one, which has more than likely taken the favorite spot. It's honestly a truly deep and open, beautiful display of storytelling by writer Gen Urobuchi and co-directors Naoshi Shinotani and Katsuyuki Motohiro and everyone else involved on the project. At this point, I need to go back and rewatch Season 2 to see if my 6 out of 10 for it will stick, but even if it does, here's to Season 3.